Welcome to Between Product and Partnerships, a podcast focused on bringing together product, partnership, and engineering leaders to discuss how to build, support, and scale SaaS ecosystems. This podcast is presented by Pandium, an integration platform for building native integrations.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to our podcast Between Product and Partnerships, where we talk about the challenges and what it takes to build integrations, tech partnerships, and SaaS platforms. And today, we are so excited to have Beth Beese, Director of Partnerships at Loopio. Beth, can you share a little bit about your background with the audience?
Thank you so much, Cristina. Nice to see you. And thanks so much for having me. My name is Beth Beese. I am based in Toronto, Canada. And I've been here since about 2008 and love living in Canada, love being outdoors, love traveling in my free time. My love language is food, preparing food, hosting friends and family, dinner parties. So that's what I enjoy doing in my spare time. But really passionate about partnerships and excited to be with you here and your listeners today.
Awesome. And I know a little bit about your background, and I think it's a really interesting conversation about how folks end up in jobs at tech and in careers with tech companies. So I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit about your journey from, I believe, working at a motorcycle dealership to becoming the director of partnerships at Loopio.
It's true. It's true. I've always been in a sales role, have a little bit of a gift to the gab, I guess, as they say, and really, really love working with people. So always had a sales aspect in my career. At one point, I was selling telecom services, fax and data lines, like dating myself a little bit there, but and a door-to-door sales position. So I had the pleasure, or the luck, I should say, of knocking on the door of a gentleman called Sean Doyle, who was, and still does, run an organization called Release Team. They do professional services consulting for IBM customers or Atlassian customers, so large vendor, software vendor organizations delivering like training services, consulting services. And Sean was so great. And while he didn't buy any of my fax lines, he actually offered me a job. So that was really my intro to, I would say, like tech sales proper, and really partnership selling as well, right? So the way that we sold in that organization was really tightly aligned with those IBM sales folks. And so really cut my teeth and learned how to find those relationships that are going to be that drive that kind of activity and those opportunities that we were looking for from the business.
You got to give me a little bit more to that story about him offering you a job. Like was it on the spot? Was he like, I don't need a fax line, but come in tomorrow? Like, tell me more. Tell me more about this.
That's so funny. Yeah. Well, he's a very friendly guy, right? So, and in a door-to-door sales kind of scenario, it's not often that you're going to get somebody that will really engage you in the conversation anyways. So the fact that he was even willing to give me 5 minutes of his time was just like a dream to me. And he told me later that he actually did run that as a little bit of a mock interview, asking me about my background, how I found myself in that role, what kinds of things I saw for myself in my career progression. And it was very easy to talk about myself. So I had a really great conversation with him. And again, just a super personable guy. Fun fact, he has a big yellow ducky addiction. And so his office is like littered with all these little yellow rubber duckies, also very disarming. So it was just a really great conversation. And as I was leaving, he made sure to connect with me on LinkedIn and really promptly followed up and said, hey, I'm not interested in buying your telecom services, but if you're interested in making a change, we really think that you would be a great fit for the team here. So it was one of those just luck of being at the right place at the right time. And I am still connected with Sean. He's a great guy. And I am eternally grateful to him for the opportunity that he provided to me.
I mean, to be fair, there is something about people that can deal with field sales like that that is extra special. Like, I don't think I could go door to door trying to sell anything. So
I wouldn't recommend.
That's fair. I did have my brief stint in my early career while I was still in college doing what is now like SDR work, right? Like just the 80 dials and mailing physical packets to people before email was like really a thing. So I didn't have to physically go to their home, but I did. I did have my moment there. That's a really cool story. And I think it highlights to like a piece of advice that I give to a lot of folks, which is like, if you can, just say yes to things. Like, you never know when those conversations will end up leading to something, whether it's like you, a new job or a promotion, or you never know when that person could be your customer or just a really good friend. Like, I think it's always a good thing to try to get out there.
Definitely.
So it sounds like you kind of got started in tech sales. What made you transition into partnerships? Like, what drew you to that side of the organization?
Yeah. So I worked with Sean and the release team folks for, gosh, like over 5 years. And that was such an awesome experience and opportunity, and really built out a lot of my professional network. Again, engaging with very senior IBM sales folks that were selling into large organizations. We're talking like Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, big government subcontract organizations, and commercial public sector as well. But I think what really attracted me to partnerships was the value that our organization brought to the end customers. The end customer wanted to purchase IBM at that time because it was the best best in brand, right? Best in breed. And so, but there really was a gap, and IBM certainly built out a robust partner ecosystem exactly to respond to that need of end customers just wanting more training, enablement, consultative engagement around the use of their software, which IBM just frankly wasn't in the business of doing. And so it not only fills a super logical gap, but it also really drives success at the customer level. And as a salesperson at heart, that's really what is most important, right? Like, yes, I love that big fat commission check at the end of the quarter, but it's almost as rewarding and fulfilling in future cycles to make your customers successful with the products and services that you're selling to them. And so that partnership between kind of what they were buying from a tech perspective from IBM, but what they were getting from services from our organization was really just, it was sort of like a little light bulb, and it went, oh yeah, okay. So it is that whole process, tools, people connection that you really need all of those things firing together to really reap the benefits of those types of investments. So for me, it was like sales is great. Like that's like such an important part of the process. But like looking at partnerships, it's really like putting jet fuel in your tank, right? To help your customers again reap that ROI that you really want them to see.
Yeah, 100%. And the services partners and the ecosystems that these large companies have built, I think is really interesting. Like, I personally worked for a value added reseller, but like an implementation partner for Microsoft. And it was same kind of thing. Like, I think you could technically buy the software without paying us, but you really needed someone as like the trusted advisor to come in and help with it. And even today in the SaaS world, not looking at these massive deployments, the software side feels like oftentimes it's commoditized, right? It's like there's software for everything, but people want to buy from people, and that might be your partner, that might be you. But I do think bringing that like human element to the forefront, especially in B2B, is really helpful. So if we fast forward or jumped to like today, tell me about where Loopio was from a partnership perspective, maybe like company size when you joined, and maybe a little bit about what you've done while you've been there.
Yeah, yeah. So I was part of the hiring that Loopio did back in 2021. They took a Series B round of investment, a pretty big one, and really greatly expanded in a number of different departments and business functions. Partnerships and alliances being one of them. So I was actually the first hire. I reported into a VP at that time to really build out a lot of the foundational structure of how they wanted to engage with professional services partners or reseller partners or technology partners, right? From an integration solution perspective. And so in my time at Loopio, we've spent really finding where the best sort of bang for our buck is, so to say, and what's driving the most value for our customers. So what we have found at Loopio is that it's a lot of professional services organizations that we partner with, but also technology solutions, right? Loopio itself, in case you're not aware, is a RFP automation sales response platform. So folks use our technology to help accelerate their time to respond to an RFP. Most people will tell you, those who complete RFPs, that stuff is super repetitive, super boring, and very time consuming, right? So we help to automate a bunch of that process. So while that's a super important and painful challenge that we help customers with, it's a pretty niche part of the whole sales and revenue workflow, right? So what's really important for our our RFP data and information to be aligned with things like their CRM, right? And other systems of record that they are using as part of their sales and revenue workflows, to ensure that as you move up the organizational, as we move up into the organization, executive leadership has visibility into projects that are, high value, high target. So those technology integrations are something that we continue to see request for from our customers, but as well as again, really driving more ROI for the way that customers use our platform.
And since I think maybe you just made your first hire, but you guys are still a small partnerships team, like how do you think about prioritization? I think, most SaaS companies will be familiar with the idea that there's the long tail, there's like the strategic partners, there's the co-marketing partners, and then there's like the big deal that comes in at the end of the year and they need XYZ integration. And all of a sudden it's landing in your lap. So how do you think about building that roadmap?
Yeah, it's a good question because it is a very small team and there's a lot of opportunity. So it's really important that we stay aligned with what the overall business goals are. So, for example, right now we are really focused on expanding our top of funnel, right? So, working with our reseller partners and looking for opportunities for joint go to market to really expand that reach and cast that wider net. Like that's really top of mind for the business right now. So, that's where myself and my team are leaning in, right? Where can we work with partners for, let's say, joint thought leadership and really putting out the value of leveraging a solution like Loopio as part of that response process, or other opportunities to tap into what our partner customers' needs might be, right? So understanding how they go to market in order to kind of hitch our giddy up to that messaging a little bit, right? So it's really, I believe, strongly driven by what the business needs, right? So if our business is really focused, as I said, on top of funnel right now, great. That's where we're going to roll up our sleeves and really focus our alliances activity. We've also done a lot of work on technology partners. Again, as I mentioned, as we engage with more and more enterprise-sized customers, they have bigger needs and requirements to leverage our technology in concert with other pieces of technology that they're working with. So to be able to make that as easy and seamless as possible for them really puts us out in front of our competition.
Yeah, I was going to ask if working with those partners has either, I mean, it probably does expand your TAM, right? But has it shaped or changed your ICP at all? Or, yeah, I'm just curious, like in
Um,
either direction.
yeah, great question. Great question. And yeah, I love that. One of my favorite examples of that is from within financial services, asset management. Never would have thought that that was like a sort of niche of that FinServe sort of industry that would bubble up to the top, but boy, it like rocketed out to the top based on a particular use case. Asset managers they have an obligation for quarterly reporting, due diligence reporting, right, out to their investors and around their assets under management. And so that feels very similar to a RFP in the sense that it's super repetitive. It's all the same. It's all the same data. It's all the same information, but they have to push it out a bunch of times. And so that's been really interesting. And we've had great success engaging with asset management firms, which has been really fun because they tend to be kind of smaller teams, surprisingly, with like big dollars underneath our belts, but very, very cool segment of the market that we've been able to work with.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I guess it does make sense that they're kind of similar to an RFP in that way, where it's like, to your point, the same stuff over and over. It just needs to be updated on a specific cadence. Do you guys find that with specific partners, like you're able to, even outside of verticals, like target larger companies, smaller companies? Like, how do you, as a partnership professional, think of that when you're dealing with a partner?
I love that question too, because we are so lucky to have many of our partners and alliances also as customers. So one example that I'll speak to is PwC. So we work with PwC. They're a customer of ours, and actually through that customer relationship was flagged to their third party risk management group. So that's really around the use case of like security questionnaires, customer risk response. through that customer vendor relationship, it surfaced the opportunity for us to work and partner with PwC. And so what we have is a joint business relationship with PwC. And so we're one of an approved enabling technology that TPRM practice will bring to customer engagements. And that's the dream, right? Especially for an organization of our size to have the name and brand of PwC, kind of tap us on the shoulder or bring us into a customer conversation. That's exactly what you want to see happen.
Yeah, and it's worth its weight like in gold, to your point. Like, them being a customer is great, but sometimes the social proof of them referring you business or having that logo on your website or whatever is like as important as the technology that underpins it and the revenue that they're generating. Yeah, it's really, when working with those large companies, there's both, there can be a ton of value and then also a ton of thrash potentially. Like, I've experienced both. I don't know if you've been through that, where it's like really, pegging an entire like quarter or half year or year of business to like, we're going to go and we're going to be in like the Google marketplace or something. I don't know them specifically, but I always caution companies to like really do a lot of diligence before you go and like build your whole business roadmap around one specific partnership, because a lot of velocity can get lost during the process of building and launching. I'm not sure if Loopio necessarily would have that, but have you experienced that in the past?
Yeah, no, that resonates. I would say that same thing, maybe in a different way, which is like putting your bets in those big, big vendor baskets. It's it takes a lot of work and a lot of dedicated effort and resources to make those partnerships really productive and successful. So when I see organizations have a partner manager role that is in charge of managing Salesforce, Microsoft, and Google, I'm like, that person is destined to fail, because that is such a big chunk of work, and to try and lump it all into one bucket just because those are the big vendors that you want to work with. Yeah, I think that's a recipe for disaster too.
Yeah, and they can be fruitful. I've just seen so many of these things end up like dying on the vine because, again, like the momentum that you have to have for such an extended period of time to stay top of mind with a lot of these companies could be challenging. Our advice is always to cast a wider net, like have more of these types of partners. Obviously, you want to focus on the folks that actually make sense to be adjacent to your business, but your customers also will like you to have a diversity of options for them as well, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to work with those big vendors, right? Like most of them have pretty low barrier of entry where you can have, let's say a presence on their marketplace or
Mhm.
of course online. And so that does provide ISV partners an opportunity for, brand and market outreach. I feel like it's a very big task, right? And it requires a lot of dedication and work to really make it as productive and successful, I think, as a lot of executives would like to see it.
And thinking about prioritization in combination with like the product organization. So, how do you think about your role in not just, we can talk about like integration, product management, and like that type of stuff, but more strategically around like who you're going to partner with. How involved is your product team? And how do you think about the combination of partnerships and products to create the best solution for your customers?
I really feel like that's one of the key, not so secrets as to making a successful alliances function within the business. You have to know what your product team is building, right? And you have to be really aligned with them so that we from an alliances and partnerships team perspective, we can introduce solutions that will enhance and augment what our product team is bringing to market, right? We certainly don't want to compete with what our product team is bringing to market, and so that's why it's so important for us to understand what that product vision is and how we can identify like where gaps are, understanding from what we hear from customers and prospects, right? So we also have to work pretty closely with the sales organization to hear what those drivers are for net new business or existing customers. That should also be influencing your internal product team roadmap and product vision. All of that coming together should really paint a picture and help to, from a partnerships perspective, identify again where those gaps kind of fall and where we think we can add value to how customers and organizations use the platform itself.
And how do you see the role of CX with your role in partnerships? And caveat, I am like a lifer customer facing person. I love CX teams. I think there's like a lot of value in those departments that folks don't take advantage of. But I'm curious in your career, like how you've worked with those types of humans.
Yes, with love, nothing but love for our CX folks because they get a lot of grunt work, right, in that customer facing role, and they have to act like a salesperson sometimes and like a support person sometimes, and so they wear a lot of different hats. So I agree, tons of love for our CX folks out there, and I think that they're also an excellent source of that type of information, right? Like again, they're on the front lines talking to our customers, so they're going to be able to identify for us what kinds of needs and requirements that our core platform capabilities are not addressing for those customers. So how can we leverage integrations or partner solutions and services and offerings to be able to really round out what our solution is providing. So again, if it's a professional services thing because they really need that particular customer might have a challenge with a migration scenario, right? That they're just not able to sort of resource themselves. So that's a great opportunity to tap a partner on the shoulder and bring in some additional support because typically speaking, at least from a Loopio perspective, like we don't have a deep professional services type bench to be able to allocate a resource to work with the customer for a 6-month migration activity. Right. And so I think that's just like an example off the top of my head, but anything like that just requires a little bit more handholding. Again, the CX is on the front line of flagging that to us, and that helps us to really round out what our alliances ecosystem looks like and the types of services and offers that we have.
That's great to hear that you take advantage of that. I think in my experience, like lifer CX people, like folks that are just love that type of position typically have like a high EQ and are also motivated by the success of the customer, right? Which is a little bit different than like sales, which is motivated by the success, but also motivated by money or like product, which might be motivated by adoption and like seeing their own thing at use, right? And I find that really, if you have a good CX team that you're paying attention to your customers in the way that they should, they will have a really strong sense of what is actually going on, to your point. Like, and even if the customer says like, I really wish XYZ would do blah, 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 whether it's partnership related or product related, someone who's been in that role for a long time is able to tell that like, what are they actually asking for and can be much more helpful than like a survey. As an example, folks ask me a lot, like, how do we prioritize what integrations to build? Like, we don't know what our customers want. And I always say, like, don't send a survey because if you send a survey, they will tell you everything they could ever possibly want, like versus getting that information like organically as it's coming up on calls. Like call recordings and transcripts are a huge thing now. So you can search for all that stuff, or just, like the CX people, it's kind of vibes based, but like they'll know. Like, oh, another person asking for Salesforce. Like maybe we hadn't written that down anywhere, but I know I hear it 6 times a week kind of thing.
Yep, absolutely. And ideally, you are tracking that somewhere, right? And you're
Agreed.
providing some technology or tools for the CX team to provide that feedback. 'Cause, full circle and love for the CX folks. They have a big bag of stuff that they are carrying to ensure that those customers, that our customers are successful, right? So we got to give them some tools to make sure that they can report back to us as a business.
100%. And just to say, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with surveys necessarily, but I do think, like, in my experience, it doesn't give you like the view you're looking for into customer need, right? It might express some amount of customer quote unquote demand or interest. I would say maybe interest, but the need, right? Like if a customer is interacting with your CX team, like they have gone out of their way to initiate contact typically, right? And that means that whatever they're saying is important to them at that time versus you just like sliding into their DMs and them being able to fill out like, a form or something like that. One other topic I wanted to cover briefly to go back to like your relationship with the product team. Can you tell me a little bit about in your career how that relationship between partnerships and product has worked when there is technology that needs to be built or managed or, we love integrations here. That's my whole life. But different companies structure this in a lot of different ways. Like how do you guys manage that? Do you have like quarterly meetings? Are you given like an allocation? Is it sort of just like whoever's the loudest gets the attention, squeaky wheel kind of thing? Yeah, what have you seen? What have you seen work?
I have probably seen it all. And it typically feels like the battle royale, right? Whose voice is the loudest often wins. And I don't find that as a particularly effective way to manage that kind of prioritization. Um, I mean, like for us at Loopio today, we have a monthly meeting, right, between our go-to-market team and our product leadership team. And so that's an opportunity for us to sort of voice what we're hearing. Right? What are we hearing through our CX channel? What are we hearing through some of the tech solutions that we have in place? We use a solution called User Voice, right? So that's another way that we surface up the requests and requirements from customers. So, or if there's a fire, I mean, look, like I'm not immune to or ignorant to the fact that like stuff blows up and we got to fix stuff, and like that will take precedent and priority over everything, right? So there's always a shuffle and a balance there for where our resources are going to be allocated, but I think it's important to have that dialogue and have that constant communication so that maybe we don't make it into this sprint with this enhancement request for this integration solution, but oh, hey, we've demonstrated that this customer that's worth this, dollar amount of ARR to the business, we should prioritize this, right? And so also leveraging that data, right, around customer, revenue impact, that also really helps to ensure that the voice of the customer is heard, but also through the sort of speakerphone of the partner and alliances organization.
I like the speakerphone instead of the mouthpiece. You're like, I think we're coming up on time, but I did want to ask one final question, which is a lot of the folks that listen to this podcast are, I'm not going to say really new to their career, but partnerships is a relatively new role in general in life, right? For software companies, especially. I'm wondering what advice you would have to someone that is joining a company and is maybe the first partnership hire and doesn't have 15 years of experience yet. What would you like tell them to do their first 90 days or their first 30 days?
First of all, congratulations. Obviously, I'm biased, but I am a big fan, and I feel very strongly that channel and alliances is going to continue to grow in importance in the way that certainly SaaS organizations go to market. I think that differentiator of how to leverage an alliances ecosystem is going to really impact from tip to tail, right? How are we going to market and generating top of funnel leads, and how are we supporting our existing customers and retaining and growing our existing customer base. So yeah, first of all, congratulations, like great choice. I would say, within your first 90 days, really reach out across the organization and talk to those stakeholders. I mean, partnerships at its core is a cross-functional role in the business. Like we don't really define the business strategy, right? We're here to support and accelerate the business strategy. So who is the executive stakeholder, on the leadership team that really requested or championed the fact that the alliances function needed to be launched and needed to be part of the business? So who is that? Get aligned with them, understand what their objectives and goals are, make sure that those are achievable goals, right? Kind of to our previous conversation. Like if you're a single person team and your objective is to manage, Google and Amazon and AWS, like that's a pretty big glass to drink all by yourself. So make sure that there are objectives that are achievable and milestones that you can clearly see yourself, achieving as you progress. I think you can also look to the other leaders across the organization. Products would be really close next in mind, and sales leadership, right? Understanding how those organizations have previously maybe operated in either former lives or even within that existing business, leveraging an alliances ecosystem, right? What worked well, what didn't work well, so that you can certainly avoid falling into potholes that are there, but also improving on things that already work, right? Doing more of that. So there doesn't have to be a, let's say, reinventing of the wheel or really building everything from scratch, because fundamentally everyone has some experience doing this and working with alliances partners, even if they don't even if it doesn't come out thinking that way, but everybody has experience doing this. We just want to identify what really the business is trying to achieve so that from an alliances perspective, we can really tap into the right types of partners and the right types of services and offerings to complement and augment, what that core offering is for your business, and help to achieve whatever metrics and goals that the business has set out for us.
And I'll add on to that. I 100% agree. I think, especially in the beginning of your career at a company, at a specific new company, you kind of have the time and the space to like get the lay of the land in a way that you won't later as you get more like acclimated and like your day to day work kicks in. And I'll say that I will always remember I was at one of my previous companies and a new person started in sales and she had a good amount of experience, but she was brand new to our organization. And she came to every single lead in the company. It wasn't huge, but there was probably 10 of us that ran teams and took each of us out for coffee, like out of the office. We like left. And I remember thinking that that was so thoughtful and also so smart to like really try to get in good with all the folks that had been there for a while right from the beginning and leave the office, like make it somewhere else, bring down the guard a little bit. And I just think that's such a smart tactic. Like what, spend like $30 on coffee across the people you're taking out, but like spend the time to do that. And it's harder if you're fully remote, but I
I
do
was going to
think there's
say, I
something.
love the days of going to a coffee
I
club down
know,
the street,
same.
right?
Same. But I mean, even just that small little thing, maybe it's virtual coffee, like buying somebody lunch and sending it to their house or whatever it is. Like those little things will get you so much goodwill when you need it. Like when that PM is the person that like holds the keys to that partnership that you have, or when that salesperson, like you really need them to have like a tough conversation with a potential customer about an integration. Like having that relationship is so important. And the $4 coffee, or I guess today in New York, it's like a $9 coffee, but whatever it is, I just think it's so worth it. And yeah, I'll always remember that. I was like, this is really smart. Like she knows what she's doing.
100%. I mean, I think that's full circle on our conversation here, right? Like, I think it's even more true today, after what we've experienced with COVID, after, really sort of coming to grips with this whole remote work scenario thing. I think people like to buy from people they like, right? And that makes it even more valid and valuable to have an ecosystem of alliances that can help you get in front of those buyers and build those relationships and have that rapport, so that the products and services that you have to offer are just like that's like icing on the cake, right?
Yeah. And I mean, especially I think in partnerships and other commercial roles in a company, like you're oftentimes looking for assistance, right? Like you're trying to sell internally, trying to sell your goals, trying to sell the specific problem that you're trying to solve at that moment, like all of those things. And to your point, like people want to buy from people that they like. And I think that really translates down into so many other places outside of just that vendor customer kind of relationship. Always be nice. I'm just like, be nice and try to be friendly and things will be better for you. Great. Well, I think we are at time. This was really, really fun. Any final words you want to share with the audience before we break?
No, just thank you so much again for the opportunity to chat with you and your listeners. And if there are folks that are new to alliances out there, like absolutely, there's tons of community support, folks like yourselves who are driving the conversation around best practices. And as I said, I think that this is a function of certainly SaaS business that is just really like on a upshot trajectory. So I'm excited to be part of the conversation and happy to connect with any of your listeners on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for spending the time with us, Beth. For the audience, if you want more information about partnerships, integrations, SaaS, all the things, you can check out pandium.com, check out our blog. We've got our podcast there. And you're, I'm sure, welcome to find Beth on LinkedIn as well. Again, thank you so much, Beth, for spending time with us. And I am sure I will see you out there.
That's a pleasure. Thanks, Cristina.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed our content, subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. For more content on tech partnerships, integrations, and APIs, check out our articles, ebooks, and other resources in the description or visit Pandium's website.